All right, good morning, folks. It is 5:30 a.m. and I'm starting my day. You may be wondering, is it because I'm hashtag hustle bro, uh, grind fam? No, I just woke up a little early because I went to bed early, and for my sins, I'm now awake. This morning, I'm just gonna kind of shift the work that I planned for the afternoon to now. And one of the things I'm doing is preparing for tomorrow's event, which is going to be my sort of opinionated introduction to Wardley Maps. And I thought I'd share real quick one of the secrets to all events that I run, any workshop, anything like that. This is kind of my Bible of sorts, as it were. And it's this book, How to Design and Teach Workshops That Work Every Time. Sorry, it's actually the title is The Workshop Survival Guide by Fitzpatrick and Hunt. I guess that's the subtitle. But yes, this book is amazing because while it was written at a time where in-person workshops were the norm, it has kind of two parts to it. One is all about structuring the event, which is mostly what I use this for. And the second part is about facilitating the event, like in person, doing the things, seating, stuff like that. But the lessons I've learned from this book are many, not least of which starting by structuring the time that you have. And then the other thing that they really kind of get into is varying the lecture format, varying from the lecture format, I should say. So switching things up so people stay interested, because if you do the same thing for 20 minutes, by the end of that 20 minutes, they mostly check out. So whenever I design workshops, I'm keeping that in mind as well. Then there's also like varying the scale of the participation. So like, do you do one to many, like in a lecture format? Or do you do like small groups? Or do you do pairs? You can do so much by both like changing what kind of exercise you run and so the activity type and like the scale of that activity. So you can do a lot there. So for tomorrow, I'm thinking I'll kind of just go through this process. I mean, anytime I start to plan an event, it always feels like I'm starting with a blank page. When in reality, I've done like hundreds of these, so I actually often end up going back and looking at previous source material. And I think there's a deck that I've used recently to express my thoughts on Wardley mapping. So I'm gonna go find that, and then we'll kind of like put that together and see what happens. Okay, good news here is that I found a deck that I put together just in February. It was a demo of sorts for a potential client. I've got some slides here, and it's not quite what I want, but it's a good place to start. So at least I'm not starting with a blank page anymore. So we can get started here with timings. I like to break the time box that I have. So here we only have an hour. I like to break that down and kind of have an idea of like what roughly the shape is going to be. Obviously, when I'm like designing a half-day experience, I'm not doing 5-minute increments like this. It's probably starting with like 15-minute increments. But since we only have an hour, the importance of designing how to use that time on a minute-by-minute basis is actually much higher because of how short the event is. As a general rule, I believe it's useful to think about the last 15 minutes as being dead time. It's just a buffer that we can use either, like worst case is just like Q&A or discussion or whatever. But basically nothing ever goes according to the schedule that you set. So I think a little bit of like critical chain project management, which comes from the world of theory of constraints. Where are your buffers? And I'm putting a buffer for the whole event at the end of the event. So if I need to use that time for something because something up here runs over, then I'll do that. The next thing I think about is nobody ever joins a call on time. Even when you have a paid client and everyone's supposed to be there, they don't ever join on time because, meetings weren't over or whatever, right? So what I like to do is, this is a trick I picked up from Judy Reese, is to have a warm-up exercise that is not an icebreaker, because icebreakers tend to feel like totally unrelated to the topic at hand, but a warm-up exercise that's relevant, but also optional. So the reason that it's useful to do that is because some people won't be there, and if they miss out, they miss out. But for the folks that were there on time, giving them something to do, it just feels good. They get some value right away, so they're not stuck waiting around, which is super boring. And so we want to take care of them. And generally, like depending on the warm-up exercise, if it's a really simple like chat prompt, maybe you can spend only 5 minutes on it. Sometimes you want to allocate more time than that. I've been wanting to try something around getting people to network together. This is on a Zoom call, right? So it's kind of tricky. But I'm wondering if there's something I can do around like a LinkedIn post where people could comment in response to a prompt and then use that as a reason to find each other on LinkedIn and connect and things like that. So I'm just gonna LinkedIn ? Feels a little bit growth hacky, engagement hacky. I don't really want to do that, but I think the benefit of networking with each other is actually worth it. Worth the risk of being perceived as someone who wants to engage the algorithm or what have you. Okay, so keep it to 5 minutes. So we'll start on time, do the warm-up exercise for 5 minutes, and then we'll get started. And that's, I think, where we start looking at these slides. Okay, it looks like I could do kind of my general overview of what Wardley mapping is, where it came from. So Wardley Maps overview. And I don't want that to take a long time. Again, we want to vary formats. So I think at most I want that part to be like 5 minutes, like just like the simple, let's say the who invented it, why, and what is it. And then down here we have like a moment where we talk about making a value chain, and I think I want to do one live on the call. Making live Wardley Maps is one of the things I love doing, so I think I'm definitely going to reserve some time for that. And also it makes the session a little bit more interactive. But this is a lecture, then this is, let's make a value chain together. And I think that's, like, it's fair to like say that might take 10 minutes because there's like the fumbling over what a value chain is as people sort of get their heads wrapped around it. And then there's actually the back and forth of what to put in the value chain. I needed to design that a little bit thoughtfully, but I think that can happen in 10 minutes. And so then after that, I have to explain evolution. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. And then I want to end on another Wardley map exercise. So like instead of doing just a value chain together, I want to also do the Wardley map together. So, okay. Lecture on evolution, which enables us to make the Wardley map. And evolution's a little tricky. Like sometimes that takes a little bit longer to explain, especially if I add some examples. And I could show some examples because I have this whole list of like different Wardley maps I could show. So maybe I'll go over a couple of those and then ease into like the doing it together. All right. And then we'll do the Wardley map together. And that's, that's going to take 5-10 minutes. It's just going to be copying the value chain over here and then working on the evolution part of it together. I have some secrets that I like to use. Shouldn't be secrets. Anyone should be able to use them. Like, for example, when I tell people how evolution works, I like to do this countdown thing where we pick a component on the map and we need to figure out where it fits left to right. So if I'm showing this right, where it fits in this evolution. And I'll say, okay, everyone pick which stage you think this component belongs in, and then I'll count down, and at the end of my countdown, everyone posts their number in the chat. And so you might pick a component like servers or whatever, right? And then you say 3, 2, 1, go, and everyone types a number, and so you get this big, quick feedback from everyone in the room who wants to participate about where they think something is, and so that helps you kind of create a histogram of sorts and use that to position where the thing fits according to evolution. So I like that. It's a lot of fun. Okay, when I'm working with timings, I'm going through this sort of iteratively, and I kind of see how things are shaped and see if I'm happy with that shape. And I know that the number one thing that I'm trying to follow through on is the promises that I've made about the session. And I promise to talk about my opinionated view of what Wardley mapping is and how to do it and all that stuff. I also promised time for conversation and Q&A, plenty of time for that actually. And right now, I think this is shaping up to not give me enough time to cover at least the first promise, because there's still, let's say the Wardley map takes us 10 minutes. I still need to like talk about climate doctrine and leadership and what all that means. And there's just so much to cover. I'm gonna have to think about this. I'm gonna think about it and then come back, because I want to make room for that. And I also want to make room for a conversation. And maybe like the way that I do this is I have flexible conversation points throughout the event instead of like a Q&A section at the end. I'm still going to structure it with this buffer at the end, but maybe I'll do 10 minutes instead of 15. I don't know. We'll see. I'm going to think about this and then come back to you. Okay, Ben from the future here, and I've done some thinking, and I think the crux is right here. This exercise around making a value chain could be pretty open-ended, and bearing in mind that one of the top complaints people have about cookie cutter examples generally is that, well, they're cookie cutter, and obviously they're too simple, and my situation is different and unique and so hard and all this kind of stuff. So I think one of the unique ways I can address this in this session is by, one, having a variety of examples, and two, demonstrating the spontaneity of just asking the audience for a situation and then making a value chain based on that situation. And I'm gonna have to be like really, really specific and concrete about how I ask for that. And I think, sure, I'll lead with a coffee shop or something because, why not? Toy example, fine. But then I'm going to ask them, like, name a type of organization and just get someone to, like, shout out a kind of organization, type in chat or whatever. And I'll do that twice and then kind of interactively extract from them who it's for, what they get, and then different, like, hows, different capabilities that are involved in meeting that need. I think that's going to work, and I think that can be pretty quick. Famous last words. One of the lessons from like critical chain and like theory of constraints, generally speaking, is don't pad your estimates. And so I think what I need to do is pretend that this is only going to take 5 minutes, because it could take only 5 minutes. And then if it goes over, then yeah, I just eat into my buffer a little bit. But I need to rework this a little bit just so that I can leave more time for the other parts of the promise that I need to follow through on. I think I'm going to remove this Wardley mapping example section because hopefully the variety that we introduce in the value chain exercise serves us also in the Wardley map exercise, and so they'll get a variety of examples. So that would be good. Okay, and then I'm just compressing all this way down, and I think that leaves me with more time. Okay, I think one of the areas that I need to find my voice with respect to like my opinionated view on things is how to speak to the climate doctrine and leadership sections of Wardley mapping, because I think about them very differently than most people encounter them when reading the book, and I need to find a way to articulate that. So I'm going to do some more thinking and then get back to you here. All right, I've popped into the future again. I made some improvements to the deck, small things like just talking about who I am and what kinds of things David and I are up to. We do workshops and things like that, which is cool. Made some small improvements to this slide, but Ultimately, I didn't quite crack open the problem of how to explore the climate doctrine and leadership tables. Um, I've got an idea of what to do. Mostly it has to do with how we turn those things into questions, and how to use that in a process where you go component by component and ask those questions about that component, and generally to see if the questions are relevant. So I'll have to share some examples around that tomorrow morning, maybe. It looks like I'm going to finish prep for this event tomorrow morning, and I think that'll be fine because the uncertainty is pretty low around what I have to do yet. The other kind of thing I might need to crack open a little bit is how doing this value chain, these multiple value chains, translates into doing Wardley maps. So do I do 3 Wardley maps then? Because that seems like that would blow up the time required. So I don't know if I'm going to just pick one of those value chains and then make the Wardley map of that with the person who volunteered that information, or what I'm going to do there, but I'll figure that out. Those are like 2 very clear problems to work on. Plenty of time tomorrow to figure that out. And that is the joy of event planning. I guess the other thing I'll just share is I spent several hours today with David examining a potential client and the situation that they're in, and designing what kinds of solutions to propose to them. So concretely, what kind of experiences to run. Will it start with a couple weeks in advance doing like a survey probe or interviews to find out what's really happening inside the organization before we go do some workshop experiences? And we're trying to figure out like how to make Wardley mapping work for them, if that makes sense. So we were talking about like, all right, well, we'll have them define what capabilities they have, and then use that to propose certain needs that will meet different users' kind of expectations, things like that, to define like how they'll make revenue and fun problems like that. So we were talking back and forth about that and scoping out the work, and then it's like, well, that's a really big project and their budget isn't that big, so what's the small version of that? All that kind of negotiation back and forth is all the work that goes into making proposals to organizations who need workshops done. Speaking of workshops, right? So that was fun, but I'm exhausted, and it's only 3:45 in the afternoon now, but since I've been going since 5, I'm gonna take a break. I try to work just under 6 hours a day, because I find if I work more than that, I end up getting a little bit toasty around the edges, and it also means I have to be more careful about how I use my time. Like I remember working in the corporate environment. You were lucky if you got 2 or 3 hours of good work done in a day, and since I'm working as a business, I can say with confidence that I beat that. Much more effective than a corporation in that sense. Getting about 6 really good productive hours in a day before kicking off. And that's just a boundary that's really helped me keep from getting too burned out and crispy. And that's just better for me. So a little inside of what's going on and all that kind of stuff. I'm tired. I'm exhausted. I'm going to go get some food. And that's it for today. I will see you tomorrow when I'll show you more of how this presentation is shaped up. And I think there was something else I wanted to talk to you about too. Yeah, I want to share how the event goes. And also the sort of wrapping up of the one test, which was like a giveaway for the folks who clicked the link to this entry-level offer that I proposed. We can go over some of the results of that, because tomorrow is when I said I would announce who was going to win the giveaway, and also learn why people weren't buying. And turns out it has a lot to do with the price being too high for people who are paying out of pocket. And that's the important thing, is they're paying out of pocket, and I'm really trying to get into more of like team budgets or department budgets instead of individuals paying for things because they want to improve their own individual kind of Wardley mapping experiences. So more for tomorrow about that. I will see you then. Oh yeah, and also I'm working on my taxes. And one more thing. Today was planning day because it's Monday. So David and I were working on our project like portfolio and seeing what we intended to do, what we got done before, what we're going to do this week, things like that. And some of the items in our portfolio feel kind of incoherent, even though we're following through on doing them. So I made this little sticker, and it was funny. Hello, I'm incoherent. I used a template in Canva, and we slapped that on some stickies in the Miro board. So I thought that was funny, so I wanted to share that with you too. Okay, bye for real this time.